It's time for this week's broadcaster or Ballpark Digest live broadcaster chat. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. Mick Gillispie will be joining shortly. Good to have you along with us. During this week's show, we're going to talk about Jack Buck's famous "Go Crazy, Folks, Go Crazy" call with Ozzie Smith. We're going to discuss the golden sombrero as our baseball lingo. And we're also going to discuss jinxing in the broadcast booth. There are different philosophies on whether a broadcaster can jinx or not. And beyond, no hitters come to mind especially. So let's bring in Mick, and let's get things going. One of the big news that came out this week, I've been keeping it as a secret, but the Blue Jays inviting a number of minor league broadcasters to join in spring training. So I will be going down. Mick, I'm going to get your experience. How are you this week?
Good, man. A little under the weather, but I'm here in Arizona, so isn't that how it always goes? You fly in and then you get sick right away, right?
The biggest danger for us, and speaking from opening day with the start of the season, all the ball players flying in from Florida into the cold Michigan weather, and they all immediately get sick, and then they get everybody around them sick. So it feels like the first week of each season, everybody is under the weather.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, they've been shutting schools down across the country because of the flu. I hope that's not what I have, but it's part of the job, man. I mean, when you do this and you're constantly traveling, you pick up stuff, and there's nothing worse than being sick in a hotel room, because you're not comfortable. But, been through it a lot, and we'll get by this one too. At least it's now and not Monday when I have a game. So that's the good news.
Right. And hopefully it doesn't rob you of your voice. I don't know. Have you ever caught a cold where your voice gets taken right from you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's happened. And it didn't happen when I was younger. But, the older I get, the more, frequent that happens. Like a couple of times a year where I'll lose my voice. And so, I've come up with some home remedies that, help with the voice. A hot toddy in particular, good drink with tea and bourbon and lemon. And you try not to talk that much. And that's the other thing is if you have a game, which, it's Thursday, so I'm not going to be on the air until Monday. I'm okay, But if I had one, say, tonight, I probably wouldn't do the show right now because I would want to keep, whatever voice I have, and protect it.
The throat coat tea, or the hot tea, it's mint with some lemon juice and some honey, works for me.
Does it?
Yeah.
Well, as soon as we finish this, I'm going to Walmart here in Scottsdale, and I may find some of that stuff.
I have a question for you because this is going to be my first spring training coming up where I'll call some games. How do you prepare for all of the different players that you see? And I'll preface that by saying, when we get into a game, a minor league game, a game during the regular season, I want to be prepared about all the different players in both lineups. I want to know about the relievers.
Yeah.
I've got to have that in front of me going in. How on earth do you prepare for all those guys in a spring training game?
Well, for me, I start like a couple months before we get there. And I try to knock out the guys on the 40-man roster. And then the guys that I think will get a spring training invite. And then as soon as they get the invite, I'll add them to my OneNote. I've got pages for each guy. And then there's always a signing or two that happens, maybe a trade, and then someone will kind of pop in. So it could be like 60-some guys. And then you do these games, and they'll invite, a handful of minor leaguers to join.
Right.
And so you'll get a piece of paper, and I'd be like, hey, this guy's not on your roster, but it looks like someone just printed it out, like Gillispie 25, well, it'd be Gillispie 99, and you might be 98, and so those guys we recognize from the minor leagues. That's why it benefits having us on there. Because, for the most part, we've either seen them or heard of them. Some guys, sometimes they'll slide a guy in and you're like, where'd this guy come from? I haven't seen him. But like, I'll give you a good example. One year, what was the guy's name? He's a third baseman for the Padres now. Castillo, no, Villanueva.
Manny Machado.
Not well now, but the guy that did it last year, I think it was Christian Villanueva. And so he got hurt. He got hurt in spring training, and so Jason Vossler was like a really low minor leaguer, but he got a lot of games in because there was a position. You had Chris Bryant, and you had Villanueva, and then all of a sudden here's Jason Vossler, and that experience. He was a low minor leaguer at the time. That experience really helped him because as he moved up through the system, and ironically now he's with the Padres. He got traded to the Padres this offseason. But he became like a power hitter, and I really felt like, and I talked to him about it too, like that him getting that opportunity in spring training because of the injury benefited him a lot.
Have you ever had in a minor league game during the regular season a guy come in where you didn't have him on the roster? So this secondhand story to introduce. This is a story from Great Lakes and Lake County. Lake County is playing in Great Lakes. Great Lakes starts warming up a reliever in the bullpen. Lake County's broadcaster knocks on the window, says, "Hey, who's that guy over there?" Great Lakes' broadcaster says, "I don't know, but don't worry. We can't be bringing this guy in." And they bring in the no-name. They bring in Mystery Player X. They never notified Great Lakes' media department. Oh, by the way, we've got a new player. He's active today.
Yeah. Well, that happens a lot more in spring training than it does in the in the minor league season. I mean, you as a broadcaster, you're just on there doing your thing. You'll figure that out. But a lot of us handle the media relations, and it's up to the team to tell us when someone else comes in. So you go, hey, you ask them to stay, on top of that stuff, because it makes you look bad. If you're the guy doing it, and then here's some guy you've never heard of. But now in spring training, it's a different animal. We played the Angels one time, and there were 3 guys wearing 98, and so we're trying to figure out who all the 98s were. And
it's like a college football game.
I'm going to say they were all in the game. Like one was batting, and then 2 were on base or something. They utilized all those 98s, and it was like 2 spring training guys, or 2 spring training uniforms, and then a minor league spring training uniform that had 98 on it. But you just figure it out. It was fun. Like, Len and I made a bit about it. We were trying to figure out who all the 98s were. But that's the most I've ever seen. 3. I can't imagine you could get more than 3 with the same number in the game at the same time. If you could, I'd love to see that.
How many uniforms does the clubhouse manager have with the same numbers on them?
Yeah, well, a lot of it has to do with what fits you, because I don't know how much notice that the player has that he's going to be going to, X big league game in spring training. You go in and they hand you a uniform. It's you just want a jersey that fits you, and they have all the high numbers. That's when you get to see your 89s and 92s and 76s, stuff like that, like football numbers. But I remember Chris Bryant wearing, I want to say he wore 76, and I saw him at his locker. It was like the spring training where he was proving that he belonged in the big leagues. He kept hitting home runs, and he was just. But they were going to send him to the minors because of the the arbitration deal, and that's what all the teams do right now. To get an extra year out of someone. But Chris was just like tearing it up. I saw him at his locker, and I said, "Hey, you're going to keep 76 when you get up here full time?" And he's like, "Nope, I think I'm going to go 17." That's what he did. Sometimes guys will stick with that number, though. Hey, look, I had a great spring, but on a rare occasion.
I remember there have been some spring training television broadcasts in the past where players brought in to pinch run or brought in to pinch hit, and the truck has no idea, let alone the broadcasters. And so they pop up the graphic. minor league player or player to be
Yeah,
named later.
I've seen that. And media relations, they do at the major league level such a good job. You know, they the minute they see that guy like stretching or something, they're trying to figure out who he is and where he's, you know, what team he's on, and they get you that information. You know, Peter Chase and Jason Carr and, you know, and Alex Wilcox over there, they'll pop into the booth during the game and, you know, have it on a piece of paper. Cubs do a great job. I mean, I'm sure, you know, all the teams feel that way about their guys. You know, they're our guys, and they make that part of it easy because there's so many other things going on when you're broadcasting a game that trying to figure out stuff that should be on the roster, it becomes really difficult.
And trying to figure out, have they changed outfielders? Have they changed infielders this half inning?
Oh, yeah.
Who are the guys that I need to scratch off?
Well, and you're going to have fun with that. You know, Len is amazing at it. Like it makes me laugh watching the way that he'll change the entire outfield and sometimes the entire diamond, you know. And it's like, he's just like a tactician, man. Like I'm talking and thinking about other stuff, and I look over and, you know, and he's got the entire outfield, you know, and there's still, you know, 1:30 left. So, you know, me, I'm like, oh, you know, here comes the pitch. Hey, wait a second. You know, it's not the same guy at third, you know. You get to a point where you start to recognize, you know, what Joe Madden's doing or whatever the manager, you know, it kind of the way that he's going to work the guys in, you know. So it's almost like you have like different sets of teams that all play in the same game, you know. So the first set's going to play 5, second set's going to play 4, you know, somewhere in there. Some of the guys will go a little bit longer. Some guys will go a little less. But, you know, my advice to you and the rest of the gang that's getting to do these spring training games is pay attention to that. And, you know, some managers, I'll tell you what, I think it was Dale Swain. Maybe it was Swain. Maybe it was Renteria. One of the managers before Joe Madden would put on the, you know, on the board, on the lineup, who the guys were that were going to replace the guys. And that was really good because you could have it written on your card, you know, just in a different color ink. And then you just swipe right through and know that this is going to be who's in there and who's out there. But you're going to see like a lot of guys that are AAA guys that are with the organization because they get that big league invite. They're trying to catch some eyes. They're going to be with the Iowa Cubs, but, you know, they're there to make an impression. And sometimes it pays off. You know, if you get an injury and a guy comes in and he does, you know, conducts himself and can play, you can, you know, you can make a good impression. And so these games are important, and they're important for the guys that are kind of those 4A guys. Then the other thing that we saw, and I don't know how the Blue Jays are going to stack up to, you know, the Cubs compared to what the talent that the Cubs had come through with, you know, kind of that core 4 or 5 that got them to the World Series, you know, the Bryants and the Baez's and the Schwarbers and all those guys. But those guys, each of them really made a huge impression in spring training and proved themselves. You know, Ian Happ did it. Javi Baez did it. Chris Bryant did it, where they just, you know, kind of stepped up and made that, you know, like that initial, hey, look, I belong here. And so those are a lot of fun. And there were years where the Cubs during the regular season were a bad team. And those guys weren't going to be in the big leagues, the Bryants and the Baez's. So the spring training games were as exciting as you were going to get as a Cubs fan because you were going to get a chance to see them play against major leaguers.
Vladimir Guerrero Jr. this spring for the Blue Jays.
Mm-hmm.
Our baseball lingo this week. Are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
On out, nobody out to the Trout. A golden sombrero for Mike Trout. He's came 4 times.
What was the first time you ever heard someone use the phrase golden sombrero?
Yeah, it's not one of my favorites. I gotta be honest with you. ESPN, you know, back when ESPN was kind of dominating with Sports Center, and we all watched it. I would love to see what their ratings were back in the day. I don't even give you a time frame because I don't know. But when I say back in the day, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes,
Before,
Patrick and Oberman.
yeah,
Scott and
right,
Eisen.
right, yeah. Before it kind of got political, and then now they're kind of bringing it back in. But it used to be everyone watched it, and the hosts.
We watched for the highlights.
Right, the highlights, and the hosts, had the catchphrases and stuff. So I heard that one, meaning how many strikeouts, and I don't like that one. I don't use that one. Me personally, when we were talking about this, that we were going to use Golden Sombrero and all that, I was thinking about a team that I was on. I hit a monster home run. I mean, probably the furthest home run I've ever hit. Like, I never pulled the ball, but it was like a summer league, not woodback, but summer league. And I kept my hands in, and I mean, like, I watched all those videos of Barry Bonds, how he keeps his hands in. And I got one inside,
yes.
And I mean, I just hit this thing probably 430. It was at a high school field, and I hit it into the football stadium. I was so proud of that home run. And then I just struck out every time after that. Like, it was like, I want to say like 7 or 8, maybe 10 straight at bats I struck out. Couldn't even make contact, Such a tough game. And to me, I feel like that, and like that call, and all. I don't ever want to feel like my call is showing up one of the players. Me personally, just because I know how tough it is,
So have you ever used Golden Sombrero on the air, or do you choose never to use it?
I just don't. That's not one of my. I know what it means, but that's just not one of my. That's just not one of the things I do. But I'm not. Look, if you do it, I mean, like, don't think that I'm judging. Just me, the guy that struck out 10 times in a row. The last thing I want to do is be talking about some sombrero. Well, what's the sombrero for 10 straight strikeouts? Is there a sombrero? 3 amigos?
Okay, so we can go back to it. Do you know why a Golden Sombrero is 0 for 4 strikeouts? It's disparaging based upon the hat trick. So a hat trick is good in soccer or hockey, 3 goals.
Mm-hmm.
So in baseball, how do you turn that around? You make it something bad for a guy to do,
right?
Like 3 strikeouts, 0 for 3 strikeouts is a sombrero. A sombrero is a hat. You make it 0 for 4 strikeouts, it's got to be better than just a sombrero. It's a golden sombrero.
Right.
And then if it's 0 for 5 strikeouts, it's a platinum sombrero, or I've seen also one. He has the Olympic rings.
Yeah, yeah.
With the Olympic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had the chain, like the chain of strikeouts, just right around my neck.
Yeah.
Where did it come from? Was it ESPN that started that, or is that like old school lingo?
I haven't found the origin. It goes back a ways, and I think it goes back before ESPN too.
Really?
I think it goes back at least 60s and 70s.
Huh? I didn't know that. Do you use it a lot?
Very good. Me? I mean, how often do we see a guy actually wear a golden sombrero? I'll tell you what I've seen, and I bet you've seen this too. I love the guy who comes up there 0 for 3 strikeouts. So he's batting in the 8th inning or thereabouts. And he draws a walk on a 3-2 pitch that's close.
Right.
And you can just see him, takes the helmet off, takes the, big smile for the dugout. I saw a guy pump his fist at the dugout after drawing a walk on 3-2 to avoid wearing the golden sombrero.
Yeah. Well, that'll get you a fine in kangaroo court, at the big league level or wherever. But I mean, I get it though. Like, one of the toughest things you have to do as a hitter is stay true to your plate approach. So if your plate approach is like, look, I'm not going to swing at this particular pitch, and that umpire is calling, I don't know, like to say a slider away, you're going to stay off of that, and you don't think they're strikes, or it's a strike that you don't think you can hit, and you've made that in your mind something that you're not going to swing at, then you don't swing at it, right? You lay off of it. But that may cause you some strikeouts. And it's hard to be disciplined when you struck out 3 times and go up there that 4th time, and here comes the 3-2 pitch, and you told yourself, look, I'm not swinging at this. And here it is again, and you walk. So I can see you being pretty happy about that. But when you do these big league games, I think one of the biggest things you'll notice is how good the big leaguers are at their plate approach and how they know who they are. They know what they do. think in the minors we see guys that haven't quite figured it out yet. You know, am I a power hitter? You know, you're 5'7". You know, you're probably not going to hit a lot of home runs, but you know, the guy's trying to hit a home run every time. You know, like, but you get to the big leagues and that same guy's moving runners and can lay down some bunt hits and foul off pitches. You know, get a guy's pitch count up. Like he knows, like, hey, look, I may get out, but if I make this guy throw 10 pitches, they're not going to throw him more than 100 pitches. You know, that's a tenth of what he's got for the game, right? You get a couple people to do that, and you can get the best pitchers out of the game and get into the bullpen early. You know, the other thing that you'll notice too in your spring training games is that when a batter in the big league gets a 2-ball pitch, they hit it. I mean, like they hit it hard. You know, it's not always you know, a home run or, you know, a base hit, but I mean, like you just get used to it. You're like, okay, here comes a 2-ball pitch, and whew, you know, guy lays into it. Minor leagues, you know, you'll see a guy take a 2-ball pitch right down the middle, and you're going, what are you doing there, right? So the guys that play at the big league level, they just play the game at such an advanced level when you compare it to what we're used to seeing in the minor leagues.
Well, compare it to broadcasting. Young broadcasters starting off are generally parodies or impressions of whoever they grew up listening to.
Right.
People who grew up listening to Vin Scully or the people who grew up listening to Pat Hughes. What you're talking about, in my opinion, is a player discovering who he is. It's the whole idea of the phrase, stay within yourself. As a young player, you might not understand that you can't hit a high fastball, or you might not understand to lay off that slider low and away. Once you get up there to major league caliber, now you understand what pitches you can hit and what pitches you can't hit. And if the pitcher gives you a pitch that's not your pitch, you know to lay back.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you talk about broadcasting. And I just kind of, this is a side note, but along the same lines is it like you mentioned it, and you're exactly right. When you start out in this business, the first thing you do is you do an impression of the guy that you grew up with, right? Ernie Harwell, John Miller for me, probably you too, you know. And then over the course of time, you know, if you become yourself, right? Because in radio and broadcasting, there's no other you, right? And that's what that genuineness is what keeps people coming back every night, right? I'm confused about like the business right now though, because it seems like so many of the guys are kind of a carbon copy of each other, you know, where there's not a lot of personality. It's just kind of like really good and smooth, but it's not like, you know, there's just no frills, and it's, you can plug one into the same spot the other one was in, you know? And I guess for me, it's like, I respect that because it's hard to do. You know, it's hard to just like be super organized. You know, same thing with a plate approach. A broadcasting approach is the same thing, you know, like, you know, are you setting up every pitch? You know, like, how are your big calls? You know, what are you talking about between batters, all that stuff. But when I see radio, like, and broadcasting period, is that it's like, it's never been more bland to me, you know? And I think part of that is, you know, you're just, the industry right now has people making decisions that think that they probably just don't want to go through, you know, the worry of, hey man, this guy might say the wrong thing, or we've kind of established this is what it's supposed to sound like, and we're stuck by that, you know? But if we did it that way in radio, we'd never have Howard Stern. We'd never have Rush Limbaugh. We'd never have, you know what I'm saying? Like, you would never have the Vince Gullys, you know, you just wouldn't have them. I mean, everyone would sound like, you know, corporate. Does that make sense?
You could go back in the day. Red Barber, nobody calls a game like Red Barber. He brought Southern folksyisms into Brooklyn.
Right.
And we just talked Tom Brenneman the very first week. Let me make a comparison for you. It sounds to me what you're saying, and I agree with this. Think about radio music.
Mm-hmm.
Everything coming toward pop. Country music, pop.
Exactly.
Rap, pop. Rock,
yes.
pop. And so there's what gets played. There's top 50s. That's what gets on. And what you're saying is, no, just be country or be rap. Like, you don't have to blend into that same mainstream sound that all starts to sound the same.
Yeah, well, I think that's what they've done. I mean, it's like it's like hair band. When music was all hair bands. Every band sounds the same.
Yeah.
They got the same lyrics. They got you can plug one in, and there's no difference. And then all of a sudden, here comes Nirvana, and that it really changed the scene of music. Eventually, if if how to say this, but I think eventually some people are going to break the exact same way. You can't tell the difference between this band and that band. It's like you can't tell the difference between this broadcaster and that broadcaster. And I'm friends with these guys, and I have a lot of respect for them. And I mean, I think that what they do is very, very difficult. But at the same time, I mean, like, variety. I mean, it's the spice of life, And I kind of radio more popular. I mean, how different was Vin compared to Ernie Harwell, compared to Jack Buck, compared to Chuck Thompson, compared to John Miller? I'm not going to say anyone's names because I don't want to do that. But I mean, like, I can name like 10 guys.
Mick, we're having a bit of internet connectivity problems right now. Mm-hmm. Let's see. We're having, from my end, I'm seeing internet connectivity problems with Mick. Mick, are you still there? Let's see if we can add Mick in again. So once we get Mick back in, yep, Mick was cutting out there. We'll get Mick right back in. The quote that always comes up for me that I think about a lot is from Miles Davis, where he said, "You have to play a long time to be able to play like yourself." And that is the idea of finding your own voice for a broadcaster, for a musician. Boy, there is that formula. There is that formula to very much be involved, to gain success by fitting in with the template of how things are sounding. You think about screenplays and the recipes that make for a successful movie. Well, there are movies that make a lot of money and that do very well. You can say the same thing for songs, but I think Mick and I agree on that personal level to try to be yourself and find whatever it is that your own personal strengths are, whatever you personally bring to the table, that is what is worth going for. Let's bring Mick back in now. We can get things going, because we had Mick skipping in and out. Let's see if we can get Mick back in. There you are, Mick.
What's up? Yeah. Hey, technology.
It happens.
I mean, you're in, where are you at?
Lansing,
right now?
Michigan,
right? Lansing, yeah. I'm here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we're talking. I mean,
yeah.
You can see us, but
Which, as long as you push through, as long as we push through, I'm glad that we can make this happen on a weekly basis.
Yeah, that's good. Like it's kind of one of those. This deal is fun. I mean, obviously, it's just kind of us just here talking. So, but I hate it that we got disconnected. Anyway, I'm listening, man. Keep doing your thing. I'm just.
Let's go on. Call of the week. Saying. Here we go. Are you ready?
Let's do the call.
1985, Jack Buck on the call, Game 5, National League Championship Series. So let's get things all queued up and ready to go. This is, Pat Hughes has called this, in his opinion, the greatest call ever made. So, Mick, I'm curious what you think. One of baseball's legendary calls.
On early. And a runner at third, nobody out in the first and didn't score. Third one in the second and didn't score. Smith push one into right down the line. And they go. So crazy. So crazy. It's a home run. And the Cardinals have won the game.
Ah, just beautiful. Go crazy, folks. Go crazy.
Yeah, I love Jack Buck. Read his book. Just always liked listening to him. I could get the Cardinals games on sometimes in Baltimore when I was a kid. I'd listen. I mean, I would have gone crazy personally if we would have had the MLB at bat when we were kids. You know, like to be able to hear like some of the legends like Jack Buck. And that kind of goes back to my point too. What I'm saying before is that, you know, everyone sounds like they're from Syracuse right now. You know, like
here's the successful recipe.
And Syracuse are great. Yeah, I mean, look, they're great. I mean, I get it, but it's like they're carbon copies. You know, really good carbon copies. And I guess like the way they teach it there is, you know, if you're really good, then you kind of break off and maybe have a personality after that. But everyone kind of has that. They all kind of sound the same, you know. But all these guys like the Harrys and the Jack Bucks, you know, they didn't go to college for broadcasting. They just kind of broadcast it, you know. Like they learned how to do it from being on the air a lot. And I love Jack, and I think like he's such a hero, you know, like just. His entire life is so interesting. And he was a guy who didn't really get a lot of recognition, you know. He said in his book, and other people have told me that, you know, Harry Carey, when they worked together, was not kind to him.
Harry Carey was not a kind man.
And then they say, well, you talked to Harry, and he just didn't buy that. You know, he thought everything was great, you know. It took Jack a long time being in the rubber chicken circuit and, you know, in the minor leagues to get a shot. And he turns out to be one of the greatest of all time. You know, the voice is fantastic. And that call, being there in that moment and being able to say what you want to say and get out of the way, it's really
I think
tough.
too that there's the New York bias that Mel Allen, Red Barber, and then beyond Vin Scully going from New York off to Los Angeles, that there is natural attention paid to the largest cities. And then Chicago comes next, and it's so easy to overlook St. Louis. And St. Louis residents might definitely feel overlooked throughout the decades. Jack Buck's one of the greatest.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. And that's a great call. And his games are fun.
I want to break this call down because the fun thing to me about this call, I might surprise you here. If a young broadcaster sent this call to me, I would break it down on a minimal level, and I'd say, you didn't do this right, you didn't do this right. But I think that the overall call is better than so many calls where a broadcaster might get all the little things right. I'll play for you what I mean.
Yeah.
Men on early. And a runner at third, nobody out in the first and didn't score. Second and third, one out in the second and didn't score.
Right? There's no base level of excitement in his voice starting up the call. His voice right now is relatively subdued. All right. It's a big moment. A home run not only wins the game, but sends you to the World Series. He's subdued entering the call, and then he doesn't get in front of the pitch. So he's talking as the pitcher is throwing.
Smith, caught one in the right.
That's happens to me.
The whole idea of Smith corks one into right, how good is corks one into right? And his voice jumps from there, it jumps up, and he gets right to the level that he needs to be.
Yeah.
So I learned from other broadcasters. They tell me you've got to get in front of the call. You've got to be ready for the pitch. And here he is.
Out in the second and didn't
He's
score.
watching. Here comes the pitch.
Smith corks one into right down the line. It may go. Go crazy, folks. Go crazy.
So down the line, it may go is brilliant into go crazy, folks, go crazy. Like we talked about the choice that Vin Scully made, calling Henry Aaron's home run to break Babe Ruth's record. Jumping right up, how many broadcasters gone, or the Cardinals are going to the World Series, and he jumps into, he's got the pulse of the crowd at the stadium.
Yeah, great call. I still think that call that we listened to of Vin of Hank Aaron's home runs, like, it might be the best call I've ever heard. Man, it's just it's so tough too. I mean, like you go back and listen to them and how much stuff you say, when you say it, it's a great call by Jack Buck because he just gets out of the way. Like he's just, you can feel the emotion going. If he says too much, it might not have been as great of a call. It's as memorable as any call.
Well,
I remember watching it.
What makes a memorable call, I would argue, are, yes, the broadcaster has to step out and has to let the crowd take over. But that go crazy, folks, go crazy is what elevates this to memorable, because all I have to do is say, go crazy, folks, and anyone who remembers it, who knows about great baseball calls, knows exactly the moment that I'm thinking of. People might not remember that Ozzie Smith's home run, of all people, the Wizard of Oz, homer to send the Cardinals to the World Series.
Yeah.
Except the call has kept it going.
Yeah. Well, he signed autographs with Go Crazy. Like that became kind of his, the slogan. People wanted that. Like, and that's when you know that you've done something iconic.
That's right. Well, are you ready to enter our final little segment?
Yes, let's do it.
So the fun part about this, for me, for you, I enjoy going back and forth telling stories. I don't know about you. Over the course of the baseball season, whatever stadium we come to, whatever ballpark, I love sitting down with the other team's broadcaster, and then we just talk about everything that we have seen in the season. I'll tell a story about bad umpiring. He'll tell a story about bad umpiring, and onward. All right, so this week for our topic, the broadcaster jinx. And I went back and I found Red Barber saying this. Are you ready? Red Barber said this.
Yeah,
this hoodoo business about a broadcaster potentially jinxing a no-hitter started in the dugouts with a fairly reasonable premise. A teammate would not mention a possible no-hitter for fear of putting undue pressure on his pitcher, who just might be pitching away blissfully unaware of what he was doing. You and I both know pitchers who have no idea that they're throwing no-hitters until somebody tells them or they happen to look up there. So, of course, a teammate might not want to say anything to the pitcher. You don't want to make him nervous. Then, before radio came along, this hoodoo or jinx got up to the press box, and the writers turned silent whenever the occasion presented itself. When radio got going, the hoodoo spread into the broadcasting booths. Not mine, said Red Barber. So, great origin. Of course, a teammate wouldn't tell the pitcher, hey, you've got a no-hitter going. And now we've reached the point where we get blamed if we say anything and the no-hitter gets broken up.
Yeah, and this is a great topic because Mel Allen was the Yankees guy, Red Barber the Dodgers guy. They're the two first Ford Frick Award winners. They have a very different outlook on, or they did anyway, of this particular topic. Mel was, not going to say it because if they didn't talk about it in the dugout, then he wasn't going to talk about it. He'd hint about a no-hitter, right? And then Red says, hey, you're a reporter, and you need to report on this. And if there's a no-hitter going, then you need to say there's a no-hitter going. I've been on both sides of this. I think, over the course of time, I've kind of landed on the Mel Allen side of this because I enjoy saying it without saying it.
Talking around.
Like hinting. Yes. Like, when you go to a break and you're like, we've completed 7 innings, no runs, no hits, and no errors for so-and-so. And, whatever. I mean, like and then you can say it without saying it, And I feel like Mel Allen said, if that's what they're doing in the dugout, it kind of makes it fun. But when I was at the beginning of broadcasting, I read all of Red Barber's books, I would just say it. And people would really think that I jinxed the game. But I can promise you that my words have never jinxed a baseball game. It's the guy's bat that's swinging and hitting the ball, or the pitcher's, it's not me. I can tell you that.
That's, I think, where I come down in terms of I cannot jinx a game. I believe that people believe that I can jinx a game. I had an angry email written to my general manager, my owner, other team's general manager, and the other team's owner, because the fan accused me of jinxing a no-hitter in the 5th inning. What kind of amateur knows not to talk about a no-hitter?
What'd you say?
I didn't even respond. I hit delete.
No. I mean, what did you say to jinx
it's
the no-hitter?
the top of the 5th inning. He hasn't allowed any hits. Here's the pitch. Line drive, base it up the middle.
You just put it right out there. I know, like Glenn's had that, like, where Cubs fans will call him and, and think I just remember looking on his Twitter one time and, look, we're superstitious in this game. I went to college at Alabama. I used to have a special, like, Alabama shirt that I would wear. And then Nick Saban showed up, and I didn't need a superstition. They just beat everyone. They were better. The team that's better is going to win most of the time. The team with the better players is going to win most of the time. And I don't believe in superstitions other than, when we're on the air, if that's what they're doing in the dugout, it's fun to kind of go along with it, But I still don't believe that us saying no hitter or anything is going to jinx anything, because I don't believe in that. I think it's ridiculous.
I used to be very superstitious.
I say that, and I'm not going to, I played softball this year, and I wouldn't walk on the lines, like going off the field. One of the players goes, because they're young guys, and some of them actually play professionally. They probably weren't supposed to be on the softball team. The one guy's like, "Hey, I saw you jump over the line. I like that." Like, I've never stepped on that line. I don't even know why,
step on the line either.
But it doesn't matter if I do or I don't,
I see superstitions as both arrogant and disrespectful, but I respect others. I'll tell you what I mean. It's disrespectful to believe that all of your practice is about to get overridden because of this shirt. My shirt is going to be better than all of the work that you put in. That shows disrespect to you. And there's arrogance too. Let's say you're wearing your lucky shirt. Me believing that this shirt is going to beat you, I'm arrogant to think that my shirt is more magical than your shirt.
Yeah. I had this superstition when I was a kid playing ball. I had to eat a steak-'em sandwich before every, game, Babe Ruth League game and all that. And I don't know why. Like, I had to eat those steak-'ems. I would have a good game. Like, and then I didn't have my steak-'em. I think it was just part of the routine, But I remember, like, being out there and, like, having, like, making an error or striking out or doing something and being like, you know what? I didn't eat my steak-'em before the game today. You remember those steak-'ems? They still have them, right? I haven't eaten one in a long time, but they have, like, they come in, like, the pack.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, it's the steak-'ems. I had to eat a steak-'em.
The mind is a powerful thing. So, I can believe what I believe. But let's say I believe in my mind that as long as nobody talks to me for the first 5 minutes before I go on the air, my broadcast will be great. And 30 seconds before I go on there, you suddenly knock on the door of my booth to ask me about a pronunciation. If that throws me off, it's not your fault, but that's the power of the mind. So I'm not going to mess with a player's superstition if he thinks it helps him succeed.
Right. Well, I can't stand it when people talk to me like 15 minutes, 20 minutes before the game, because I really got to just focus on what all the things that I'm trying to get to get the game going. You know, it's like once the game kind of gets started, it's a lot easier. But I know what you mean. Like we're so routine oriented in baseball, whether it's us or the players or the managers. And so we kind of get into these routines. Matt Caesar, I remember, like, he was always the first guy in the clubhouse, and I would be there early, and I'd walk in, and he had the exact same sandwich from Subway every single home game. There's a Subway in the stadium parking lot. He ate it every day. And then he went and worked out, and then he went and hit. You know what I mean? Like, and this is before anyone even showed up. It was just part of his mechanism, kind of doing it that way. But and I think, like, when we get off the road, you know, like the first day back off of a long road trip, that first game's always really tough because you're out of your routine, you know, like you don't sleep the way that you want to. You know, you get there and you got a million things going on. You get to the park later than you used to. You know, but the other thing too, there was a guy. Do you remember the guy that used to brush
Turk
his teeth?
Wendell, right?
Yeah, Turk Wendell. I like, why the guy's brushing his
Well,
teeth
he
in the
ate
dugout.
licorice too. Turk ate all sorts of things.
Yeah, but if it works for you, go brush him up.
Well, Tim Haggerty, the voice of El Paso, I remember coming into the broadcast booth when he was the voice of Mobile, saying, "Need a toothbrush."
Hags.
And we didn't have a toothbrush for Tim. He brushes his teeth before the start of games. He'd do push-ups before the start of games, and he didn't have a toothbrush for Tim.
I remember that. Yeah, old Hags, my boy. Yeah.
Here's another one.
Yeah, well, I've never done that.
I've got another.
A fifth of scotch before the game. No, I'm just kidding. I
All
swear.
right, so there's the no-hitter jinx. Here's another one that I know you know about. I rushed into the other team's broadcast booth. We're in game one of a doubleheader. We've played the first 6 innings of the 7-inning game, actually 6.5 innings in 50 minutes. And I rushed in there to say, this is the quickest game I've ever seen. And the general manager was sitting beside the broadcaster, and she shot me a look of terror. Because you never say how quick a game is going, right? Because that's going to slow it down. And of course, 2 strikes, 2 outs, bottom of the 7th inning. We're, 1 pitch away from playing an hour-long game-tying home run. We play 10 innings. And in game 2, we played 11 innings. We played 9 extra innings in what was scheduled to be 2 7 innings of a doubleheader. We got in 21 innings. And she has never let me forget that.
Well, like, I worked with Larry Ward in Chattanooga. He's been there forever. And if you make a comment about how the game's going speed-wise, he's really angry. Like, it's not like, you know, ha-ha. It's like, you know, like, you just messed this thing up. You know, so, I mean, like, I'm a kid. I'm there. I'm his assistant. And I'm like, this guy's like crazy about this. Don't say anything, you know, the speed of the game, you know, and now I do it to my interns, but I always laugh about it because I don't think that, honestly, I don't think that it matters, but I like to open the window and say something to the guy that's broadcasting next to me because I'm like kind of taunting the jinx a little bit, you know, like, you know, now that I would probably do that to Larry, like if I felt like it, yeah, like, you know, just to kind of get under their skin a little bit, you know, that we do that stuff to each other.
Well, that to me is the biggest superstition that is off the field, in the press box, in the broadcast booth.
Yeah.
I know so many people who you do not mention how quickly a game is going.
No. Mm-mm. And they don't want to hear it. And, you know, like Larry's adamant, like he really believes, to the best of my knowledge, that you can slow the game down by talking about it. You should get him on here one time and ask him.
I believe it because he's not alone in that. The whole idea of jinx and superstition. Sean Mernon, the voice of Bowling Green, commenting, Barry Zito used to point his shoes directly south in his locker. Some of these stories are the best. Superstition is wonderful.
Yeah. Don't walk on the line.
Well,
We know
some
that.
guys purposefully walk on the line. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah. Well, I believe it. It could happen, you know. We should do like a book on baseball superstitions where we just go around and find all of the. I mean, what was it? Wade Boggs would eat like a chicken every game, you know, like he'd just sit there and put down a bucket of chicken. In the movie Major League, and then the Indians really did this. Remember, they like, you know, like they had the Joe Boo set up in one of the lockers.
Yeah.
Remember that? You know, a couple years ago in 2016, and they got to the World Series. Don't drink Joe Boo's rum. Very bad.
But I want to go back to what you said in terms of the word routine. Whenever I ask a guy, hey, what are your superstitions? So many players will say, I don't really have any superstitions. Once I ask them, what is your routine on a game day? That's when everything starts coming out. All right, I have to put on my left sock first, and then I've got to do this, and then I've got to have this song in my ear at this time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Don't pick up Chris Mason. Played with him. He didn't want you to pick up his baseball when he was on the mound. He threw sidearm. You know, like, I mean, every guy has this different thing. Remember Dallas Braden? He got mad at A-Rod for running over top of the mound.
Yes.
To get back to third base.
Get off my mound.
After like an out. I didn't even know that was a thing. Like I didn't even know.
Is this the same Chris Mason, by the way, the right-hander who came up in the Tampa Bay system?
I don't know. I don't.
We had a Chris Mason who was on the Montgomery Biscuits back in the day, and he was the quickest worker I ever saw. I loved watching him on the mound, and you didn't bunt on him because he would take that as a personal affront.
Hey, that's you want to hear some great baseball stories. There's a book of baseball superstitions that came out. I mean, not superstitions, but what do you call? What's the book? You know, help me out here, Jesse. The things that we don't do.
Oh, the unwritten rules.
Call that unwritten rules. Yeah. So they had a book on the unwritten rules, and like it was like, Nolan Ryan's pitching, and the Cubs are playing, and somebody's like up there trying to bunt. And Sean Dunstan's up next. He's yelling from the dugout, don't bunt, because he knows if you bunt, the next guy's getting hit.
Yes. Well, let's go old school style. The word on Rube Waddell, and I'm really going old school. So this is the turn of the 20th century. From the 1890s, 1900s, Ty Cobb's a young player playing for Detroit. Rube is the star, the ace of the Philadelphia Athletics, one of the best pitchers in baseball. But the word...
Yeah.
Exactly.
Johnny Max.
The word on Rube was, don't make him mad. Like, as long as he was in a good mood, you could always get something to hit. But once he got mad, you were toast and he was about to dominate you. So Ty Cobb would yell at his teammates if anyone started to heckle Rube or bench jockey him when Ty was about to come up. They compliment Rube. Let him know how good of a pitcher he is because I'm about to hit against him.
Yeah, I think that works. I think that plays into the game. You know, whether it's I'll tell you this. I remember when Joey Votto was a player in the minor leagues, the Lookouts got into the playoffs, and one of the strategies was to, like, you know, talk smack to him to get him out of his game. You know, I mean, he just didn't take well to it back then. And then, you know, like, I'm sure, like, now, I mean, that was a long time ago. But guys would just come up and just start trouble with him, you know, because it was like a strategy.
The Lance Stevenson thing. Or in the NHL, there are always those irritants who are trying to do whatever they can to get the star player off of his mojo.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So I could see that. There was a lot more of that back then than there is now, though.
Although... we still catch it at times in basketball. I think basketball and hockey are the easiest sports to see guys, or soccer.
Yeah, but I'm saying in baseball, yeah. Right. Basketball, I mean, like Larry Bird and Michael Jordan, those guys, I mean, they would talk some serious smack to you, you know, and I know that still goes on. That's part of the game. That's one of the things I like most about the NBA.
Yeah. Uh, about what players don't like, by the way, it just came to my mind. Remember how Adrian Beltre had teammates trying to touch his head? Albus Andrews.
Yeah.
Don't touch Adrian Beltre's head.
No. I mean, everyone's different. Everyone's got their thing, and when you go out and play baseball every day, the thing, like, if it means you got to eat a bucket of chicken to get hits. I mean, Wade Buggs had a lot of hits. He must have eaten a lot of chicken over the years.
Whatever gets a guy going. Or here's the opposite of that. We had a manager who would tell the bus driver, anytime we lose a game on the road, find me a different route to the field. And there was one team that just
Really?
kept beating us. And finally, the bus driver told the manager, I'm all out of routes. You're going to have to win one.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of something. You just triggered something. Like 1988, the Orioles started 0-21. And so Cal Ripken was the manager at the beginning of the season. They fired him, and they hired Frank Robinson. And Cal Jr. was the star of the team. They had Eddie Murray. They had some good players, but they didn't have any pitching, and they got a lot of bad luck. And I remember when this was going on, like, Frank Robinson was every day was trying to do something to end the streak, like whether it be, a different route to the stadium, walking through a door backwards, like just doing stuff, like, and another story kind of along that line was when Joe Madden was in Tampa Bay. I remember they were having, like, I think it was his last year there before he signed with the Cubs, but they were going through a stretch, and he brought in a Native American medicine man to, like, do some stuff to kind of, like, get the bad spirits out of the clubhouse. And I don't know, man. I mean, look, stranger things.
Here's a compliment.
Um,
Have you ever walked into a clubhouse and seen the lineup card upside down?
Yeah. Hey, this is a good one, lineup card. Chattanooga had Doug Mankiewicz as their manager. I like him too. I think he's a really good manager. I'm surprised that I don't know if he's even in baseball anymore, but he's good. He can manage, knows the game, players love him. And the Smokies were killing these guys. Now, the Lookouts were good, and I think they won the championship that season. But they just ran into that, it was like a 5-game series. We beat them the first 4. Go into the clubhouse, the lineup card's blank. And he told those guys, hey, you guys make your own lineup card today. Says you don't want to, and it loosened up the clubhouse enough. And they won that game, and they ended up beating us for the half, and then went on to win the championship. But I think, like, stuff like that, it's maybe, is it a superstition thing, or is just get your mind off of it and you're laughing and you're a little bit more loose.
Change
right?
things up. Have you ever seen the lineup card plucked out of a hat? I love when the manager, all the guys, the starting 9 guys who are going to play that day are put into a baseball cap. And then he shuffles up the hat, and then they pluck out leadoff hitter, number 2 batter, just to see if that can get things going. At one point, I've known radio broadcasters who the manager brings them into their office. And the manager says, well, I can't make up a winning lineup, so you get your chance today.
Yeah, I'd love to make a lineup. No one's ever asked me. I'd love to do it. The problem is that the way that things go these days, there's so many things that have to go on the card. This guy's going to bat here. This guy's going to play here. It's not like you get to just put your best players in a spot to win. We're going to put the guys that are going to, that are being paid and that are prospects in position to do their thing. And when it's Javi Baez, I mean, it doesn't matter, but some of these other guys that aren't as good, you get stuck with, crappy players, hitting in spots where they're not going to be able to do anything. But the larger point is that, these games, the minor league games, are so meaningless. Like, they're not worried about that. It's just the experience of playing and getting that opportunity. And then down the road, to see if these guys can go to the big leagues and make a difference. I'm going to tell you this right here, is that if you don't play well in Double-A, you're not going to the big leagues and playing well. That's me seeing a lot of minor league games. If you struggle in Tennessee, you are going to struggle in AAA Iowa. You're going to struggle in the big leagues. Period. I mean, that's just the way it is. I've never seen anyone struggle in Tennessee and then go to the big leagues and then, and tear it up. But we still have this philosophy where we got these guys and they're paid and all that, and we got to put them in there, like there's going to be a light switch that comes on, and boom. But I don't believe that. I just think like either you're good enough or you're not good enough. And maybe position players wise, pitching, like you can tell who can play. You know what I'm saying? Like you can see the guys that are maybe they're just young, like they're really young. And they're in a level of against players that are much older, and that's kind of where they're being pushed. But you still see the talent, you know what I mean? Like with guys, like if you don't have that ability to go out and do things, it's not going to just magically appear one day, Do you understand what I mean?
I do, but I'll fight you on this point. Some guys do have a light switch go on. Some guys, and you don't know where it is. They might have a terrible April. But May, June, as the weather warms up, I have seen guys get better, figure it out, improve over the course of the season. And when they looked at the start of the year like lost causes, by the end of the year, they had earned a promotion. So it's such a long season that guys can go, and some guys have great Aprils and then sink away from there. So I think one of the biggest.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mean it like that. I mean it in a way of like the body of work. But you're right. There's guys that, start slow, but you can still see it. Like, you don't always have to have a hit to have a good approach. Like I can think of guys who hit the ball really hard, but just hit them at people. But you're going, okay, that was a great at bat there. I'm not saying numbers wise. I'm just saying like ability to hit the ball, like to catch the ball, or you can't catch the ball. Javi Baez is the best player I've ever seen just being where the ball is in a big game, whether it be him saving a no-hitter, which he did with 2 dramatic plays in the late innings, including one in the 9th, or, just in, like when he got his call up to the big leagues, I knew this guy's going to do something, probably hit a home run, and he did, special that way. He could be bad. He went through a stretch where he was like 1 for 21, but you could tell like there was just something about him. You're watching it and you're going, man, this isn't going to last very long. The results weren't there, but the talent.
Mick, that's an hour. So over the course of this hour, we've discussed spring training prep, the golden sombrero and why not to use it, Jack Buck, go crazy folks, jinxes, superstitions, no-hitters, lengthening the game, unwritten rules, and at the end, does a player have it or does a player not? That's a lot of ground to cover over the course of today.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Hopefully next week I'll be able to do it again. I know with these games going on, I don't know what time I'll be available, man.
We'll figure it out
earlier, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah, a lot of fun, and you know what? This is the best I felt in the last day. Even though I'm sick, I think just talking, made it a little bit better. Now I'm about to go to the drugstore here and get some meds and move on with my day here in Arizona.
I'm glad,
fun,
and
Jesse.
We get to think of stories that we haven't thought about in a long time.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Kevin, I'll see you at Don and Charlie's this weekend. Trust me, I'll be healthy for Don and Charlie's.
This is the Ballpark Digest broadcaster live chat talking about baseball. He's Mick Gillispie, the voice of the Smokies, and watch him and Len Casper as they call Cubs spring training games. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler with the Lansing Lugnuts. Big thanks to Kevin Reichardt and Ballpark Digest, and we'll check in with you next week. Happy start of spring training.